You know how your foundation can look perfect in the morning but turn orange or gray by lunch? That's oxidation mismatch, and there's a whole category of products designed to solve it by doing something really different. They change color based on your skin's chemistry. I'm Dr. Elena Voss, and today we're breaking down exactly how skin-responsive tints actually work at the molecular level.
You're listening to Luxury Beauty on a Budget podcast. Quick thing to mention up front, everything you're hearing, the research, the data, the script, that's all human verified and written by real authors. The voice delivering it to you, that's AI generated. Just wanted to be upfront about that. If you've been listening for a while, genuinely, thank you. You showing up matters. And if this is your first episode, welcome aboard. I think you're going to like what we do here. We break down beauty science, call out overpriced nonsense, and find you the budget alternatives that actually work. New episodes come out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. All right, here's what we're getting into today.
So, what are skin-responsive tints exactly? They're cosmetic formulations containing chromophores that react with your skin's pH and temperature to create personalized color. Unlike traditional pigments that just sit on the surface, these pH-reactive compounds undergo actual chemical changes when they meet your epidermis, adapting to your unique biochemistry. This isn't marketing mythology, it's electrochemistry applied to color cosmetics, and understanding the mechanism helps you distinguish legitimate adaptive technology from overpriced gimmicks. The technology matters because it addresses a fundamental problem. Fixed pigment foundations assume uniform skin chemistry across all users. They don't. Your skin's pH fluctuates between 4.5 and 6.5, depending on genetics, barrier integrity, and environmental factors. Reactive tints work with that variability rather than against it. Now, let's talk about what skin-responsive tints actually are at the chemical level. These products use something called leuco dye chemistry. Those are colorless precursor compounds that develop pigment through oxidation or pH-triggered structural changes. The primary chromophores include red 27, which is DNC red 27, red 21, also called eosin, and newer synthetic dyes like reactive red 158. When these compounds contact skin, they undergo acid-base reactions that alter their molecular structure. The conjugated double bond system shifts, changing which wavelengths of light the molecule absorbs and reflects. The result? Color that appears only after application, customized to your specific skin environment. Traditional foundations use iron oxides. Those are Ci77491, Ci77492, Ci77499, and titanium dioxide in fixed ratios. These inert pigments provide consistent color regardless of substrate. Responsive tints flip this model. The substrate becomes the variable that determines final appearance. The technology originated in acid-base indicator chemistry, the same principle behind a litmus paper. Phenolphthalein, a classic lab indicator, remains colorless below pH 8.2 and turns pink above it. Cosmetic chemists adapted similar compounds to trigger within skin's narrower pH range, that 4.5 to 6.5 window, creating chromophores that react to subtler variations. Most formulations combine reactive dyes with carrier systems, typically cyclopentasiloxane or dimethicone blends, that ensure even distribution and allow the dye to penetrate slightly into the stratum corneum for better reactivity. Without proper carrier chemistry, the tint oxidizes unevenly, creating splotchy results. Moving on to how this actually works, the molecular mechanism depends on electron delocalization. Leuco dyes contain aromatic ring systems with electron withdrawing groups, like carboxyl, hydroxyl, or amino groups. In their base state, these molecules are colorless because their electron configuration doesn't absorb visible wavelengths of light. When exposed to acidic pH, so hydrogen ions, these groups accept protons. This protonation changes the electronic structure, extending conjugation across the molecule. Longer conjugation systems absorb lower energy, longer wavelength photons, shifting absorption into the visible spectrum. Your eye perceives this as color. Red 27, that's tetrabromofluorescein, is the most common reactive pigment. At pH below 5.5, it exists in a lactone form, colorless and stable. Above pH 5.5, the lactone ring opens, creating a quinoid structure that absorbs blue-green light and reflects red-pink wavelengths. The reaction is reversible, meaning color intensity can shift if skin pH changes throughout the day. Temperature also plays a role. Thermal energy increases molecular kinetic activity, accelerating the oxidation process. This is why skin-responsive tints often appear more vibrant after application. Body heat, approximately 32 to 35 degrees Celsius on facial skin, provides activation energy for the reaction. The complete process involves 3 stages. First, initial contact. Reactive dyes disperse across the skin surface in their leuco form, appearing white or slightly translucent. Second, pH activation. Hydrogen ion concentration triggers structural changes within 30 to 90 seconds, initiating color development. Third, oxidation stabilization. Atmospheric oxygen completes the reaction, deepening color intensity over 2 to 3 minutes until equilibrium is reached. Melanin density affects perceived color, but doesn't alter the chemical reaction itself. On deeper skin tones, the same reactive red may appear more berry-toned because reflected light passes through melanin-rich epidermis twice, once entering and once reflecting back. This creates optical filtering, warming the hue. Some formulations include buffer systems, citric acid, sodium citrate, to narrow the pH activation range, creating more consistent results across different skin types. Without buffers, the same formula might produce coral on alkaline skin, pH 6 and above, and deep rose on acidic skin, pH 4.5. The technology works best on intact barrier function. Compromised barriers with elevated TEWL, that's transepidermal water loss, often skew alkaline, which can produce unexpectedly intense color. This is why some users experience different results after exfoliation or acid treatments. You've temporarily altered the pH environment. So why does this matter? Adaptive color technology solves oxidation mismatch, the phenomenon where foundation turns orange or gray after a few hours. Traditional pigments don't change, but your skin's surface chemistry does. Sebum oxidation, pH drift from environmental exposure, and natural warmth shifts all alter how static pigments appear over time.
Responsive tints continually adjust because the reaction remains dynamic. As your skin's pH fluctuates through the day, typically shifting 0.2 to 0.5 pH units, the chromophore equilibrium shifts correspondingly. The result is more stable color fidelity across 8 to 10 hours. Coverage requirements also differ. Because reactive pigments develop in situ, you need less product to achieve visible correction. Most formulations provide sheer to medium coverage, 20 to 40% opacity, while traditional foundations require 40 to 60% pigment load for similar coverage. This means lighter textures and fewer pore-clogging ingredients. From a formulation cost perspective, reactive dyes are cheaper than premium pigment blends. High-quality iron oxides cost around $8 to $15 per kilogram, depending on particle size uniformity.
Red 27 costs around $12 to $18 per kilogram, but requires 60 to 70% less concentration for equivalent coverage. Budget brands can achieve comparable performance without the pigment procurement costs that inflate luxury foundation prices. The dermatological advantage is reduced comedogenicity. Traditional full-coverage foundations require 12 to 18% total pigment load, plus dispersing agents, often dimethicone or PEG copolymers at 3 to 5%. Responsive tints typically contain 3 to 5% reactive dye, plus lighter carrier systems. Lower total solid content means less occlusion and better breathability, particularly relevant for acne-prone or sensitized skin. Let's look at types and variations. Single dye formulations use only red 27 or red 21, producing variations of pink to rose. These are the most predictable and least likely to cause unexpected results. Examples include products like Say Slip Tint, which uses red 27 at approximately 4%, and Tower 28 Sunny Days, usually around $20, manufactured in South Korea using DNC red 27. Check the link below to see the current price. Dual dye systems combine red reactive chromophores with yellow 5 lake or yellow 6 to create warmer, peachy neutral tones. The yellow component provides base warmth, while the red adapts to depth. Glossier Perfecting Skin Tint uses this approach, but charges around $28 for 1 ounce. That's a 40% markup over comparable Korean formulations, at 60 cents per milliliter versus 40 to 45 cents for K-beauty alternatives. Check the link below to see the current price. pH-buffered formulations include citric acid and sodium citrate systems, typically 0.5 to 1.2% total concentration, to standardize activation pH around 5.5. These produce more consistent cross-user results, but sacrifice some individual customization. They're better for oily or combination skin types, where pH variability is higher. Hybrid pigment blends combine reactive dyes, 2 to 3%, with small amounts of traditional iron oxides, 2 to 4%, for sheer base coverage that adapts at the surface. These provide better initial opacity during the 30 to 90-second activation window, eliminating the white cast phase some users dislike. Rome Ann's Juicy Lasting Tint uses this technology at usually around $12 for 0.23 ounces, Korean manufacturing. Check the link below to see the current price. Serum tint hybrids incorporate active ingredients alongside reactive pigments. Common additions include niacinamide at 2 to 5%, hyaluronic acid, that's sodium hyaluronate, typically 500 to 1,000 kilodalton molecular weight at 0.5 to 2%, and peptides. These multitask products work well for minimalist routines, but require careful layering with other bioregenerative serums to avoid interference with pH-dependent actives like L-ascorbic acid. Now for some frequently asked questions. Do skin-responsive tints work on all skin tones? Yes, but the visible range of adaptation narrows on deeper skin. The chemical reaction occurs identically across all melanin densities, but darker skin provides more optical filtering, which reduces apparent color shift between light and dark versions of the same reactive dye. On Fitzpatrick 1 through 3, you might see pink to rose variation. On Fitzpatrick 5 through 6, the same formula appears more consistently berry-toned with less visible adaptation. How long does the color last before it needs reapplication? The chemical reaction stabilizes within 3 to 5 minutes and remains consistent for 6 to 10 hours, depending on sebum production and environmental pH exposure. Unlike traditional pigments that physically transfer or break down, reactive dyes fade when skin pH shifts significantly, from exercise-induced alkalinity or excessive cleansing, or when the stratum corneum naturally sheds. You're working against cell turnover, not mechanical wear. Can you layer skin-responsive tints with other makeup? Yes, but application order matters. Apply reactive tints after pH-neutral primers and before powder products. Silicone-heavy primers, more than 30% cyclopentasiloxane, can delay activation by creating a barrier between dye and skin. Powder layering is safe post-activation because talc and silica don't alter pH. Are reactive dyes safe for sensitive skin? Red 27 and Red 21 are FDA approved for cosmetic use and generally well tolerated, but they're still synthetic dyes with sensitization potential around 0.1 to 0.3% of users. The primary irritation risk comes from carrier systems like fragrance, essential oils, or alcohol denat at concentrations above 5%, rather than the chromophore itself. Patch test for 48 hours if you have a history of dye reactions or rosacea, as the pH interaction might trigger transient erythema. How do skin-responsive tints compare to traditional foundation in price per use? Budget-responsive tints cost 40 to 60 cents per milliliter versus 80 cents to $1.50 per milliliter for comparable coverage traditional foundations. You need approximately 0.3 to 0.5 milliliters per application for responsive tints versus 0.5 to 0.8 milliliters for traditional formulas due to lower pigment requirements. Over 30 uses, a $20 responsive tint, that's 30 milliliters, cost 67 cents per application versus around $1.20 plus per application for a $45 luxury foundation at 30 milliliters. The cost efficiency improves with sheer coverage preferences. To wrap this up, what are skin-responsive tints? They're pH-reactive formulations that create personalized color through acid-based chemistry, not fixed pigmentation. The technology leverages leuco dye structures that respond to your skin's unique hydrogen ion concentration and temperature, producing adaptive color that adjusts throughout the day rather than oxidizing into unrecognizable shades. The molecular mechanism, proton-triggered conjugation changes, is straightforward electrochemistry, not cosmetic innovation theater. Brands charging around $40 to $50 for reactive tint formulations are exploiting information asymmetry. Comparable Korean and European alternatives deliver identical chromophore technology at around $12 to $20 with equivalent or superior carrier systems. For barrier-conscious users seeking lighter textures with dynamic color matching, responsive tints outperform traditional foundations on comedonicity, adaptation range, and cost per use. They're not universal solutions. High coverage needs still require layered pigment systems, but they represent genuine technological advancement in a category often dominated by repackaged legacy formulations. Choose formulations with disclosed dye types, Red 27 or Red 21, minimal fragrance, and pH buffering if your skin runs oily or alkaline. That's it for this episode of Luxury Beauty on a Budget podcast. Thanks for spending your time with me today. New episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so you've always got something coming. If this episode was helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star rating and a quick review. It sounds small, but it genuinely makes a difference in helping other people discover the show when they're searching for honest beauty content. And hit subscribe or follow so you get notified the second a new episode goes live. I'll see you in the next one.